Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Real race cars might have been put away for the winter, but the sim race cars are back out in play once again. Welcome to Season 3 of the BRSCC Clapham North Winter eSports Series. New circuits, new cars, new tracks, and even new drivers, but still the same great action that we've had before. Hello everybody, Scott Woodward here to guide you through all the action as before in this series. 5 rounds coming up over the next few weeks, and we start not in the UK but for our away round to kick things off. And what better than some wintry Spanish sunshine? We're here at the Circuito de Navarra, which is a Motorsport Vision owned circuit outside of the UK, and we're using essentially the 2010 layout, 2.42 miles in length, and it's situated in the Los Arcos region of Spain. It is a pretty fast circuit with long straights, some technical sections right towards the end, long fast corners. It's pretty much in many cases more of a rear limited circuit, given there's lots of big braking zones and low traction areas to try and get the car the power back underway. In any case, it should be pretty exciting, particularly as we have a brand new car in the mix. Now, we had the Mazda MX-5 Mark IV Cup car below the first 2 seasons. Now you can see that we've switched. It's no longer a Mazda MX-5. It is now a BMW M2 CS Racing. This is one of the latest cars that was added to the iRacing service at the last update. It is a free car for everyone to use, and so far the reviews have been absolutely rave about it. A lot of the drivers absolutely loving this new car. It is essentially the new rookie level, entry level saloon car tin top for drivers to use within iRacing, and it was a pretty natural choice to switch from the Mazda to the BMW, seeing as BRSCC does have some association with BMW racing in the form of the BMW Compact Cup and the more recently added BMW 1 Series Super Cup, so it made logical sense to keep up the BMW theme. In terms of this year's Winter eSports Series, a really good turnout for this season with 38 registered drivers, a majority of which are here tonight to compete, and it's across quite a wide spectrum of the BRSCC Formula roster, from Fiesta Juniors and Mazda MX-5s to BMW Compact Cup, city cars and more across the board. Even a couple of wildcards, a couple of photographers and pit lane reporters are also giving their go as keen sim racers too. And as qualifying continues on here, ahead of our first of 3 15-minute races on this 3.9 kilometre circuit, it's going to be quite intense to look for. So looking at qualifying, we're about halfway through the session. James Dennison has set the fastest time so far, and he's currently on original pole position with a 1 minute 50.140, and currently alongside him on the front row for race 1 is set to be Matt Kendall in the first of the 2 Clapham North cars, because we have to say a big thank you to George Grant and everyone at Clapham North MOT for title sponsoring the eSports series for 2025. You can go and check them out on all the socials and on their website too. And there are 2 Clapham North team cars in the field, one which being Matt Kendall, the other one being Will Blackwell Chambers, very much mimicking the sponsorship he runs on his car in real life in the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. But there is Will Blackwell Chambers, who I also have to give a shout out to as well for all the admin work he's been doing behind the scenes as well for this series, so massive shout out to him. Currently 3rd fastest behind his teammates, only about a 10th and a half off Kendall's time in 2nd place. Looking down the rest of the order, we've got Benji Douglas, who is one of the incoming Fiesta Junior drivers in the 2025 field, as far as I'm aware. He's currently at the moment in 4th quickest. You can see him there in his Sim 1 liveried machine. 5th quickest is Isaac Doble, who is the younger brother or younger sibling of BTCC star Mikey Doble. So he's currently 5th quickest. He raced in the series last year, and back again to do well in a car he's a bit more familiar with, given that they regularly race BMWs. 6th is Ari Barker, and he's the quickest of the 2 Team Northbrook racing cars. Now, Team Northbrook are the defending 3-time champions in the Student Motorsport Challenge, which runs within the Nankang Tyre City Car Cup, and Ari, in fact, faster than Richard Jepp, his teammate and team leader. Now, that'll go down later on, but Ari's certainly showing lots of potential in P6. Thomas Merritt so far is 7th. He's one of the 2 Team P12 eSports cars. He's sharing the same team with Lewis Turkington. And I did say Turkington. We do have a Turkington in a BMW, but not the one that you're expecting, because Lewis is a little further down the order at the moment, but he isn't taking part in this Series 2. Teammate to Thomas. Thomas currently running well in 7th quickest. The rest of the top 10 is Pete Smith in 8th, who's regular at Mazda MX-5s. 9th quickest is Richard Jepp, who is the 2nd of the Northbrook racing cars, and then Chris Etheridge rounds out the top 10. One of the kind of baseline liveries that we've given people if they don't have one of their own. In fact, he's got one that's rather inspired by a rather well-known BMW livery. If you're a fan of British touring cars, particularly from the 90s, you'll know exactly what that livery is inspired by. His team is #Blessed, which runs typically in the C1 Endurance Series, but also he's run, I believe it's the same Etheridge, with Andrew Etheridge in the Supersport Endurance Cup at the wheel of a BMW M3. He's certainly no stranger to BMWs or to endurance racing, currently running sat in the top 10. So the Nikita de Navarra, which of course was taken over the last few years by Jonathan Palmer's Motorsport Vision Group, has had a few updates and enhancements to it over the last few years, and they did some work last year to put some good work in to help improve and to add a few more sections to this circuit. This circuit in particular, as we mentioned, quite rear limited, lots of sharp, slow corners. One key point in particular that's going to be crucial, especially at the start of the races, is those first 3 right-handers going all the way through turns 1, 2 and 3. All 3 of them are right-handed apex corners, but they are diminishing at slower speed. You're right on board with Isaac Doble here, so the first one's pretty quick. You start braking at the second one, and you're trail braking all the way through to the second apex, back down to second gear from what was about 5th. That is, we ride on board here with Isaac. Let's take a lap of the Nikita de Navarra. So you're flat pretty much through here at turn 4. And then you set yourself up for a double apex left-hander here. It's a long left-hander at turn 5. Uphill, couple of dabs of brake, bring the car to the right-hand side, and again, brake hard, and you're all the way through turn 6. Little tweak of oversteer as he hits the curb. There's the circuit opens out again on 7. Then this is where you've got a really crucial corner of turn 8. You've got to really get a nice, solid exit here, brake in a straight line. Slow corner, but it's onto the long back straight, which could be a real key passing spot down here. I imagine down towards turn 9, you're going to see quite a few passes being set up. I think the first proper passing spot is going to be into that complex of 5 and 6, I imagine. Unless you can try and set somebody up together at the inside of turn 3. And out through turn 9. And then this kind of second half of a lap, this back section of the circuit is where you see these very angular corners. Slow, sort of tight braking zones, keep it nice and steady, feed the power in gently because you don't want to burn up the rear tyres too much and start getting loose later on in the race if you push too hard. Going over the curbs, and then the final corner here is quite unique. It's an uphill approach into the final corner, bit of reverse of Circuit the Americas where you're going uphill into the final corner. This is the last couple of corners we're coming through. There's the pit entrance on the right hand side where it skips the last 2 corners, and then here this uphill approach towards the final turn, under brakes all the way across the curb. Wind the lock on and you steady with the throttle on the exit, and this long pit straight that takes you all the way back towards those triple right-handers to end the lap. And that was a lap with Isaac Doble. comes across the line in car 650, and he currently sits still in 6th position. So we're coming up towards the end of qualifying with about 2.5 minutes to go. It's still James Dennison who set the benchmark time with 1 minute 50.140. Speaking of which, he's just gone for a loop around at the back section of the circuit and rejoins no harm, no foul. Still stays fastest of the session. Is there any other movers in this current session? I can't see anyone else has moved too much in the top 10. The outside, a couple of others might be of note. We've got Tom Griffiths, who, before he went to the MXI Super Cup, was a regular BMW Compact Cup racer, and indeed also race winner. In fact, I remember a couple of times he won some races. If I remember correctly, he won a race at Thruxton a few years ago in damp conditions in Compact Cup, around about 2019. He's no stranger to rear-wheel drive machines, particularly BMWs. There is Tom, sporting a bit of a throwback livery to his car. He usually runs a blue MX-5, but before he was running a black BMW, so he's gone back to the slightly more throwback livery, the black with the yellow and white stripes. And currently sat at the moment in 12th fastest. And that will put him on row 6 for race number 1. Sweeping past one of the T12 eSports machines. That's either Thomas Merritt or Lewis Turkington he's gone past. Turkington, in fact, in P16 at the moment. See a few more cars doing laps. A couple more drivers we look down the order. As we see there, that is the 12 eSports car that we're following now. And the BMW M2 CS Racing, as I mentioned, new car to the series. Some 365 brake horsepower. It's a straight 6 engine, rear-wheel drive, and in typical BMW fashion, it's a true proper driving machine. We are looking at Lewis Turkington. And the great thing is that I've seen across the board, not just within this championship, with this series, but across the board in anyone that's uses iRacing on a regular basis, a lot of positive, a lot of rave reviews for this car. They absolutely love it. In the sim, it's proving to be a really useful tool. In the real world, they also have their own BMW M2 Cup that usually races typically over in Germany with a couple of way rounds to Austria. It typically follows the sort of ADAC racing weekends and DTM. So this car certainly is a good user-friendly car for beginners, hence why it's been put as the new baseline entry-level saloon car. And certainly proving to be quite the hit with everyone so far. This is Nick Ramsey-Goff, who is a regular who we've seen in both the City Car Cup and also in C1 Endurance, that he's going back to full-time this year. I get used to saying 2025 now, being this year. And he sports the livery there, which had the Driven Minds livery. So they're one of the partners for BRSCC, and that car's certainly running well. He ended that session in 17th place. So with qualifying complete, the cars will start to grid up as we get set for our first of 3 15-minute races here at the Circuito de Navarra in Spain. And this is how they line up then. James Dennison takes the first pole position of the season. He'll start from the front of the grid alongside Matt Kendall on the front row. Then it's his teammate Will Blackwell Chambers starting third, and Benji Douglas, the highest placed of our Fiesta Junior runners, he starts in fourth. And it's Thomas Merritt and Isaac Doble on the third row of the grid together from Richard Jepp and Harry Barker to make an all-team Northbrook row 4. And then Pete Smith and Chris Etheridge round out the top 10 in 9th and 10th respectively. Then it's Joe Moss, City Car Cup racer for the Flat Cap Motorsport team, starts 11th, ahead of Tom Griffiths in 12th on the 6th row. Row 7 sees John Pethick and Tom Monhemius, who started last season. He's back in row 7, ahead of Keith Dalton and Lewis Turkington, who'll start the first eSports Series race from row 8 and 16th. Then it's Nick Ramsey-Goff and Daniel Crisp ahead of Jamie Peters-Ellis, regular Fun Cup reporter and keen sim racer, starts in 19th, from Paul Dunningham to round out the top 20. Carl Pilkington, motorsport photographer, alongside Neil Chisnell from Mazda MX-5s on row 11. Row 12 is ST150 Challenge racer Mark Blunt. He's alongside Max Haller, who is another incoming Fiesta Junior, in 24th on the grid. Then we go to James Roberts, who's a regular BRSCC photographer, starting on row 13 alongside Dan Gamble. Then Josh Jackson and Bobby Holmes from Jacob Woods and Jonathan Berry round out the top 30 runners and retains the field. So 30 cars all set for 15 minutes of racing for the first race of the season and indeed of the night here at Circuito de Navarra. Watch for the lights at the top of the screen on the left. Once they all go out, we'll be good to go and under green flag conditions. So Dennison on pole, Kendall alongside him on the front row of the grid. Who wins the whole shot down towards turns 1, 2 and 3? 30 BMWs. Of course, 15 minutes here to kick off the 2025 BRSCC Clapham North Winter eSports Series. Red lights come on, 3, 4, 5, and race 1 of the season is underway. Clean start for the first few rows. Dennison gets a good launch away from pole position. Two Clapham North cars are going to go side by side. Also darting out in the red is Benji Douglas. Now the pinch points of turns 1, 2 and 3. Can they all squeeze through without too much drama, if any? So far they're minding their P's and Q's. This is looking good. A little bit of bumping and boring, but they've all just about survived it. I spoke too soon. One car went spinning off in the background, but they've all just about got through. That's one of the T12 eSports cars that's gone around. That's Lewis Turkington. Another one's got looped around. That's the car in the most wanted livery. That's Joe Moss in Flat Cut Motorsport, but he rejoined back in 28th towards the rear of the field. So a little bit of bumping and boring, but they've managed to get away with it just about unscathed. Dennison leads them out through 6 and 7 for the first time. It's Kendall in second place, Matt Chambers in third, and then a battle going on for fourth already between Benji Douglas, Thomas Merritt and Isaac Doble. Onto the back straight towards turn 9 for the first time. Back pouring its way on. These massive pack of BMW M2 CS racing cars. Another car's gone around the background. Can't quite catch who that is. Right towards the rear, there was somebody spinning in green and orange. Etheridge having a look up the inside of Ari Barker, and the spinner was Josh Jackson, who is a regular in the Student Motorsport Challenge in the City Car Cup. He races for Queen Ethelberger's collegiate team. Side-by-side battle already. This is between the Team Northbrook car of Ari Barker, scrapping with Chris Etheridge, and just behind them is Tom Bonhemius in green and white. On the inside, trying to steal away from ninth, and there's a bit of contact between Bonhemius and Etheridge. By the looks of it, and Etheridge comes straight back into the path of a couple of cars in the mix who are a bit of innocent in that mix. So, seeing lap 1. We're just trying to find their P's and Q's here where they can. We're just trying to find their feet. Bonhemius has carried on. There's a massive scrap on the exit of the corner. This is between Griffiths, Ramsey Goff, got in there to Ari Barker, JP Zennis I think is in there as well, and there's also his Carl Pilkington. JP Zennis in the purple Barney the Dinosaur livery car there at the back of this 5Q. On to the start of lap number 2. Dennison leads from Kendall in second place. Blackwell Chambers in third with Douglas and Merritt rounding out the top 5. All side by side between Barker and Pilkington to his inside. Pilkington gives him the squeeze. Mixing through 3, but Barker has the inside line for 4. Over the curb he goes. They're still side by side. Peter Zennis flashing the headlights saying, come on, if you guys are going to battle, get on with it, because hardly you two fight each other. The easy is these cars can make a break. Pilkington gets that distracted and makes contact as he tries to rejoin. Though Peter Zennis was just taking his line, and Pilkington goes spinning off onto the gravel. Across the red he'll go, but he goes tumbling down the order, so his race has taken an early nosedive. He rejoins just behind Mark Blunt in the number 3 MBM racing machine. He used to front-wheel drive Fiestas than rear-wheel drive BMWs, but finding his feet, he's just following the 2 BMWs that are in the kind of Schnitzer liveried cars. That's Dan Gamble and Neil Chisnell, which is ahead of them. There's a scrap going on, I think, between that looks like it's Turkington and Paul Dunningham, I think it looks like. And Turkington sweeps around the outside into turn 9 and takes the position. Through he goes into what is now 20th place. Through, more cars scrapping amongst themselves. This is Max Haller and Jake Woods. More of our junior drivers in the mix, so 3 of them have found each other on track together. And even though they're running the same livery, teammates, I don't think they are, so they're going to be battling their own piece of real estate on track at the moment. Side by side on the exit. Looks like Woods has got the advantage over Haller for this point. And it's good to see you've got a really nice mix here of junior drivers mixing with some of the seniors on track to showcase what they can do. Another final corner onto the pit straight. On board with Keith Dalton, he's got the run on Bobby Holmes here in the other of the Barney the Dinosaur livery machines. Yes, I did say Barney the Dinosaur. Up for a move then. Dalton just moving around on the back of Bobby Holmes, looking to try and set himself up for turns 1, 2 and 3, but we're carrying a little more speed into the first part of that complex. Dalton just sat back for a moment and tried to find the optimal line. For the undercut, switching back at the exit of 3. Still, Bobby Holmes keeping defensive, and it gets to the point where you only be too defensive, otherwise you're going to start losing time to the cars in front. So whether or not he realises that it's better to let Dalton go or just keep on fighting, at the moment, Bobby wants that place and he wants to hold on to 16th. Still chasing in front of them, Dan Crisp, who's in 14th place, and just behind him is John Pethick. In fact, actually, that was a loss of position there. This is further back up the order because this is now Jacob Woods battling with Keith Dalton in the BASF liveried car. That was Keith we were on board with. So he was actually under threat from 2 identically liveried cars of Jake Woods and Max Haller. Now, the front of the field, this is James Dennison under threat from Matt Kendall for the lead. So the two Clapham North cars have broken away from the rest of the pack, scrapping over fourth, which is headed by Benji Douglas. Now James Dennison coming under big pressure from Matt Kendall, who was one of the stars of the last eSports season, had that fantastic 4-wide finish at Donington Park, in which he came out on top of. So as Kendall turns his way out of the final corner and back onto the pit straight again, we've just gone past a third of the race distance. This now holding the racing line as they come up towards turn 1. Here's the rear view from Dennison looking back at Matt Kendall. Make a move into 1, but he's setting him up for an optimal line through turn 3. Just hangs back because he knows he might carry too much speed. Now has the inside line. Dennison can't really defend it. They're going to be side by side on the exit. Dennison gets the power down a little bit more. It's the inside line for 3 as he turns in. Oh, this is going to bring more Blackwell Chambers into the mix, and they're starting to stack up a little bit here. Two Clapham North cars are just getting a little bit more involved with each other now that they're tailing on Dennison. The brakes of 5 and 6. Just that little wiggle through 7 and up towards the tight turn 8 that takes them back onto the back straight. And in these shorter 15-minute races, it's all well biding your time to a certain degree, but you have to go for it. There's a move. It's on. Absolutely go for it. There's your battle pack then. 8 tenths separates the top 3, all locked together. Dennison in yellow and purple, and there were 2 white, blue and red from North machines of Matt Kendall and Will Blackwell Chambers in 3rd and 4th. Benji Douglas still holds 4th position on Thomas Merritt and Isaac Doble, then Jet, Smith, Monhemius and Griffiths the top 10. Nick Ramsey-Goff also running well in 11th place, starting 17th, made up a couple of places in the opening couple of laps, and he's in mix. He's not quite on the back of Pete Smith and the rest of the cars in that mix. He's some roughly 2.5 seconds away from the ace of the top 10. He's embroiled in his own fight at the moment with Harry Barker, and they've got Jamie Peterson and Dan Crisp involved in there too. So there's a bit of a squeeze going on in mid-pack. It's behind the top 3. Benji Douglas now under threat from Thomas Merritt. Thomas was quite an impressive runner in Fiesta Juniors last year, and showing his ability here behind the wheel of the T12 eSports machine. Douglas red, Thomas Merritt in the white and two-tone blue, the kind of pale grey car behind him, which has no sponsors on it, a livery for this one. It's a bit of a late entry with Isaac Doble, but he's now gone with the sort of standard stock-looking cars. He's got Richard Jepp, who's moved up ahead of Harry Barker, so Harry was in the top 10 ahead of his team leader, but he's now dropped outside the top 10 to 12th. So Richard Jett representing Northbrook Racing at this point to the top of the circuit once again through 5 and 6. That wide approach to get the undercut through. There's Pete Smith in the second of the Bromley Racing cars. His teammate is a little further up the road in the lead by 4 tenths ahead of Matt Kendall. The group battling for 4th heads onto the back straight. It's Tom Griffiths fighting away with Tom Monhemius over 9th place in the field. Griffiths, as we mentioned, established BMW driver, now turned established Super Cup driver, and a race winner from 2024. Took his first win, a rather emotional one, at Snetterton. He now has been chased down by another one of the young talents in the field, Tom Monhemius. He was had quite a few good moments throughout 2024, had a good couple of battles at the front, particularly at Alton Park, I remember. Tom Monhemius getting involved in some pretty interesting battles. On the back, there's another battle going on here. This is Nick Ramsey-Goff, who's been caught by Harry Barker, it seems. Nick Ramsey-Goff is holding on to 11th place, and Harry's, I think he's on the comeback trail because he was on the top 10, as I mentioned. Trying to pick his way back through, but he's finding a little bit of a difficult stool to get around in Nick Ramsey-Goff, who's in pure pace, holding his own here, right just outside the base of the top 10. Sneaking up the inside on the exit, slightly better traction for Barker as he gets off the final turn. And now the pair will go side by side, almost touching wing mirrors down towards turns 1, 2 and 3. Who's got the better shift time? Who's got the better run down towards the first couple of corners? Who's got the bravery to hold their line? And Ramsey-Goff sweep around the outside. The answer is he thinks about it, goes over the curve, takes the wider approach. Knows he'll be better set up for turn 3 as they go through. The tighter exit. Barker's got the line, he's got the place, and he's up into 11th spot. And the hill towards 5. 6. Just in the background, I can see that is Jamie Peters-Ennis not too far behind in 13th place. A bit of a gap to Dan Crisp in 14th position. He's actually battling away with Dan Crisp and John Pethick, who's been a regular in X5 racing recently. Whilst that battle goes on, I do want to note that the lead battle has just got to 0.3 of a second, and they've pulled away by another 6 or 7 from Will Blackwell-Chambers. So once we look at this battle here for 13th, 14th and 15th positions, it's getting a little bit closer at the front of the field between the top 2. It's Dan Crisp here, wants to hold his line and hold the position as Pethick darts out to have a look. Dan Crisp has the line covered and holds on to 14th place at this point with the leaders, and Dennison now under a bit more pressure from the 2 Clapham North machines. Kendall, I wonder if he simply just knows that how much time he's got left, just trying to pressure him into a mistake, just trying to force him to drive off line, brake a little bit later, just trying to distract him a little bit, trying to get him in the mix. Then as we continue focusing on this 3-car train, I can also keep one eye on the battle of the 4th that's going on, headed by Benji Douglas. There's a 5-car train there. This is the main focus at the moment. With the lead. Into brakes, you're trail braking all the way through turns 2 and then into turn 3, just shifting down through the gears. Talk about rear limited, the fact there's so many traction zones where you have to get on the power off the slow corners to get the bite from the tyres and the power running through the rear wheels. It means that you can quite easily start burning up the rear tyres, and that can start to cause you to slide around. It can cause them to overheat, it can cause them to wear and degrade too much. Point where you're losing grip and you're not getting off the corners as quick as possible. That can only lose your time. You'll be fishtailing off the corners, not finding the grip that you want. That can only lose you time to the cars around you, both in front and behind. So these 3 here are managing air tyres the best. They've got the pace over everyone else at the moment. I'm certain as the season goes on, we saw this as the season went on in the past 2 Winter eSports series, that when drivers start to get more and more track time in this car, in the sim, start to click with it more, as off the road has gone Keith Dalton. He's down in 17th now, but he was in the battle pack that was scrapping over with Crisp and cars behind. Here's a replay of Keith Dalton going into turn 5. That's the line. This is up the inside. That's, I think it's either Jake Woods or Max Hall or one of the 2, but round he goes. A bit of a nudge from Jacob Woods, that was in 84. So continues, down a couple of spots goes the NHA Motorsport man in the BASF livery. This leading trio is just compressing a little bit more. Will Blackwell-Chambers is also just waiting for his moment. He's staying in the toe of his teammate, Matt Kendall, at this point, as they come down towards turns 1, 2 and 3. There is just under 2 minutes left on the clock. They take the curb, a wide approach into turn 1, sweeping through, under brakes, again, just gently just bouncing on the brake pedal, looking down through the gears one after the other, second gear through this very tight right-hander. Now back through to this little short straight towards 5 and 6. Quite an impressive run from James Dennison, I have to say. He was raced in last season and had a couple of good moments in the 2023-24 season. It seems as though this BMW is really clicking with him at the moment. He's 2 with the pair of Clapham North drivers, of course, but he seems to have the advantage at this point, and it's these 3 that have the pace. They are the pace setters. They're the ones that are setting the current benchmark early on in this first race, but there's still 14 more races left to go, so there's still quite a bit of the season left to run. It's only race number 1. A long way to figure out who wins this eSports series. The season will head towards the real world racing activities continuing again in the middle of March on the Silverstone GP circuit, which is where the final round will be the week before on the Thursday. Wide there for Benji Douglas, exiting the complex of corners here towards the back end of the circuit. It's now just allowing Tom Merritt and Isaac Doble to get in the mix. Little hail slide there from Mary Barker, from Richard Jepp, I should say, coming through the second to last corner. Back out this little section past the pit entrance. This little group battling over 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th. Douglas, Merritt, Doble, Yep and Smith all together. They're just keeping the top 3 in touching distance, but not close enough to really put any pressure on them. So 1 lap to go then, and this is now the chance for James Dennison to see if he can hold on to take the first victory of the season But how much more does both Matt Kendall and Will Blackwell Chambers have? He's getting a little more aggressive on the inside. The tighter line through 3. This now gives Blackwell Chambers the chance to latch together. So how much of these two Clapham North cars are going to work together? Possibly form a double pincer on James Dennison and try and take 2 for the price of 1. On board with Kendall. This is the view that he sees. The brakes. The left-hander of 6. The flick through 7 as it turns all the way around. And then the hard braking zone of 8 sets you up onto a long straight. If you can get a good exit here, there's a chance he might put an attack in through 9. Takes that more aggressive line through. How he's in the toe. Over the curb on the exit. Up through the gears again. Into 3rd gear. 4th on the limiter. It's not close enough, I don't think, to make a move. I think this will be, unless Dennison makes a mistake, it's going to be Dennison who will come out on top of this one. Through right of 10. 11 over the curb. There's a huge sausage curb on the inside line. Through 12 again. Another tight left-hander. Up towards 13. This is another optimal passing spot if you can line it up. But it looks as though Edison's got this one under control in the last couple of corners. And will keeps on pushing. But it might well be that James Dennison has this one just about sewn up at this point. One more corner to go. Kendall will keep on pushing. One last chance to attack. He might actually think he can bank the points for second and go for it in race number 2. They'll head to the checkered flag. And victory in the first race of the new eSports season going to go to James Dennison. Dennison heads to the flag and takes victory in race number 1 at Circuito de Navarra. It's 2nd and 3rd for the two Clapham North teammates. It's P2 for Matt Kendall, 3rd for Will Blackwell Chambers. NG Douglas takes 4th place in his first race of the season. Navarra in 5th, Isaac Doble in 6th. And further back, this is Max Haller battling with Paul Dunningham over 18th position. The rest of the field come and take the checkered flag. It's 7th for Richard Jebb, 8th for Pete Smith, 9th for Tom Griffiths, and 10th Tom Monhemius. Still battling to the flag. It looks like it's going to be 18th place for Max Haller, just ahead of Paul Dunningham. And they're still battling towards the end, and round goes. It was one of the Arstein-inspired liveries. That was Neil Chisnell. And just comes across the road just in front of Mark Blunt there. Thankfully he survives and comes across the line in 24th. So, plenty of action, plenty of talking points in that first race of the season, but it is James Dennison who picks up the first win of the 2025 Clapham North BRSCC Winter eSports Series here at Navarra. And he did so after a fine drive holding his own and allowing both Kendall and Blackwell Chambers to tail him all the way from start to finish, but it was the Bromley Racing driver that had the advantage and kept his cool when both of them tried to put the pressure on. So, there's no rest for the wicked because we go straight in from race 1 to race 2, and the grid is set by the results of race number 1. So, literally the finishing order that you saw there is going to show you how they'll line up for race number 2. As it was before, there are the results. It is James Dennison who takes the first win of the season by almost a quarter of a second on Matt Kendall in 2nd place, and Will Blackwell Chambers completing the podium. Benji Douglas was 4th, and Thomas Merritt in 5th, and Isaac Doble in P6th, and Richard Jebb, Pete Smith, Tom Griffiths, and Tom Monhemius round out the top 10. You can see as we scroll through the rest of the order, Nick Ramsey-Goff was a good mover from 17th to 12th, so he'll start on the 6th row of the grid this time. The movers and shakers down the order, and a couple of drivers that did fall foul. Lewis Turkington, who was a lap down in the end, but he'll start back in 27th for this second race. Another chance of redemption. Also, Joe Moss got involved in a couple of skirmishes at the start of the race. So straight into race number 2. Can it be James Dennison who'll make it 2 from 2, or can either of the Clapham North drivers do anything to stop him? Lights out. Oh, it's race number 2 underway at Navarra. Good start again from Dennison. The field spreads its way out down towards turn 1. I think that's Jacob Woods and Max Haller going side by side mid-pack as they come towards turn 1. Dennison who gets the whole shot. It's then 2nd place for Kendall again. Blackwell Chambers 3rd, and Benji Douglas, little tap of the tail there from Thomas Merritt. Up the inside there goes Isaac Doble. They're 3 wide into turn 3. Doble tries to get the pass on both Douglas and also in there to Thomas Merritt. Meanwhile, behind there's several cars involved in the incident. We've got Mark Blunt, Joe Moss is involved. It's either Max Haller or Jacob Woods, and Carl Pilkington avoids reversing Jacob Woods as he gets back onto the circuit. A little bit of a skirmish into turn 3, but they've all just about survived it in the end. A few cars, of course, have in the race taken an early nosedive. Ball with Richard Jebb then into turn 8. He's right on the back of Isaac Doble here trying to get past Benji Douglas, who's lost a couple of spots off the start. So he started 4th. He's down 3 spots to 7th. So not a great start for Benji. He's got some work to do here. Tom Monhemis has got the perfect view back in 8th position. He's watching these two go side by side. Douglas tries to go back around the outside of Jeppin towards turn 9. Gets shown the edge of the road. In fact, actually, Tom Monhemis was so busy watching them, he loses a place to Pete Smith. But Pete up into 8th position. Monhemis down to 9th. He's going to battle in the second half of the top 10. He's not wasting any time. Meanwhile, change to a lead because Matt Kendall's gone up the inside in towards turn 12. They're side by side again at the final corner. And is there anything here possibly? Well, not quite the final corner just yet, but they are racing their way towards the end of the opening lap. And so far, there's been a couple of lead changes. They are still wheel to wheel. Dennison goes back around the outside. That gives him the optimal line for the final corner. Kendall tries to turn in. Quite have the grip, and now he finds himself under threat from Will Blackwell Chambers. The two Clapham North cars are just about side by side as they exit lap number 1 down to the pit straight. Kendall has the slipstream. Blackwell Chambers has a double toe down towards turn 1. Can he try and make a move as they come through? They are nose to tail through turns 1, 2 and 3. They all hit the brakes, and now they've got some company in this early laps because also you can see here that's Thomas Merritt up the inside. Looks Matt Kendall and just about has to back out of it because Dennison covered off the line well enough to hold on to the place and keep his cool. Now Thomas Merritt, meanwhile, he's up into 4th place and he's on the tail of the top 3, so he's not letting them get away too quickly in his opening couple of laps. He could be a possible contender to get himself a podium here if he can keep up with the top 3 and not lose too much time. Be careful also looking behind him because there's a small group of cars forming up, led by Isaac Doble in P5. Merritt just having a little sneaky look up the inside for 3rd place. They all run a little bit wide. In fact, actually, Merritt took the tighter line. He forced Blackwell Chambers to make a mistake. And with better momentum off the corner down towards turn 9, 3rd place goes to Merritt. So up into P3 goes the T12 eSports machine. Good move from Thomas, but the harder these two fight each other, of course, the easier it is. The two cars in front to make a break, as Dennison, of course, has retained the lead and remains in front in the second lap. Come back through into left-hander this back end of the circuit. Out of turn 13 towards 14 and 15. This is starting to shape out a little bit in these early stages, like it did in race 1. We've got the early couple of cars out in front that are pulling the gap, and everyone else behind scrapping amongst each other. Places further backwards. Here further back, this is Jamie Peters-Ennis, who's battling with Paul Dunningham and a recovering Keith Dalton. Peters-Ennis holds his line on the exit of the corner and he's still side by side with the MX5 Championship man. And then you've got Dan Crisp and Joe Moss, who, I mentioned in race 1, is sporting a Need for Speed inspired livery on that car, as is also James Roberts, who's just behind them in 20th place. Joe Moss and Chris going side by side and just trying to shoot it deep. Etheridge was going a little wide there on the exit of the corner, but he just rejoins wide. Mark Blunt's in the mix as well. They're 3 wide on the exit of the corner here. Dunningham tries to hit 2 for the price of 1, which hasn't quite worked out. Dunningham gets tagged sideways. Over onto the grass he goes. He rejoins, but back down in 22nd place because through goes Chisholm to pick up a position. It's unfortunate. Last snap of the race, as you'd imagine after the first couple of laps, has gone to James Dennison. So 1 minute 50.586. We continue to watch this mid-pack fight amongst each other. Here you've got Chris Etheridge trying to rejoin a bit more, gaining a bit more momentum after his little tangle with Paul Dunningham. Mark Blunt moving to the inside line there. Didn't get the best of exits off turn 8, and now it's almost 3 wide. JP Tez goes up the inside and tags the inside of Keith Dalton. Dalton continues, but JP Tez is just way too late on the brakes. He loops it round and back he goes, just in front of a rather bemused Jake Woods, who is now in 24th position. So he continues on. And Jake now fancies the position. Up the inside he goes. It spooks Peter Dennis out wide onto the runoff area. It's back on the curb and still remaining around the outside. And round has gone Dan Gamble as well in one of the Schnitzer BMW inspired cars, and just does so as Bobby Holmes comes into view. So lots of skirmishes going on in the mid-pack and further down in the mix, but this is all the fun and games here. The fight for third is still on here between Thomas Merritt and Will Blackwell Chambers. will, again, taking that wider racing line because he knows the inside might offer a position here. But again, Merritt has to go really defensive to hold the place. It stacks them both up into the path of both Isaac Doble and Richard Jett. The four of them go together through turn 4. Now Doble up the inside of Blackwall Chambers. He takes briefly 4th position from the BMW, and round goes Blackwall Chambers. Has a big tail slide there. That was a bit of a tank snapper there. I think he got tagged a bit by Richard Jett, who's backed off. Because of that, it's also let both Pete Smith and Benji Douglas through. So Blackwall Chambers, after challenging for 3rd place at the start of the lap, let himself all the way down in 7th, having lost 4 places. So turn 8 onto this back straight, see if we can make a bit of a recovery in this second half of the race. We're heading towards it. Here's a replay of what happened. So this is where Richard Jett's on board view. So Doble's gone through on the inside line. Blackwall Chambers has left the door open. Jett goes up the inside. I'm not a steward, so I can't call that one. So it looked as though the door looked open. But Jett definitely wasn't fully alongside. But we'll let the steward decide if there's any fault to blame if that was a racing incident. He did at least back off and not go through and gain an advantage. That's a key thing for Richard Jett. But nonetheless, stack up of cars here. For position. Some scraps going on here between them as they come up towards the end of another lap, towards the halfway point in race number 2. That's Pete Smith going up the inside and over the curb, going to retain 6th position. Just having a bit of a look at up the inside of Benji Douglas. The lead up towards the front. James Dennison continues to hold the advantage with Matt Kendall right on his tail, locked onto his rear exhaust as they come through 1 and 2, back into turn 3. I feel like this is, again, playing out very much identically to how race 1 did. Kendall just trying to find an opportunity, biding his time somewhere, trying to look for a pass, look for a gap somewhere. He almost found it in the early stages of this race a couple of laps ago, but Dennison stuck it out around the outside, held the line. It's just making it that little bit more difficult for Kendall. These two are very evenly matched in terms of pace. You feel that Kendall is just trying to hustle a little bit more to try and get something out of the number 67 machine. Fastest lap of the race has gone to Matt Kendall, 1 minute 50.263, so he's currently the fastest man on track at the moment. Again, just lining him up for a possible move here. Just tailing him here down towards the braking zone of turn 9. Really aggressive bite of curb on the inside, took a lot of the inside line to really press the issue. He wants this lead, and going up the inside has a look, and he thought about it through turn 11. Again, forcing Dennison to make a mistake and run wide. They hit the brakes and turn in for 12. Consistent pressure being applied here by Matt Kendall. How much can James Dennison absorb? Is there a moment where he might well possibly start to crack underneath it? He managed it in race number 1. Matt Kendall, who has applied his fair share of pressure both in the sim and also in the BMW Compact Cup, knows what it takes to win races. Constantly trying to harry and press the driver in front to try and make them into a mistake. He hasn't got to the headlight flashing stage yet. Distract him, make him look into his mirrors for a split second too long. The bumps in towards turn 1, and again, just look, you see Kendall more aggressive, the tighter run through turn 1. It does mean he gets a slightly wider approach out through turns 2 and 3, and again, Edison doesn't feel comfortable taking the traditional racing line. He has to go straight to the inside for the braking zone at apex of 3, just to keep that line, try and negate any possible attack that comes from Kendall. To the quarter of a second as they come through turn 5. Towards 2/3 race distance in this second race of the evening. Circuito de Navarra, the opening night of the 2025 BRSCC Clapham North Winter eSports Series. And Kendall having a look up the inside, he thinks about it. Again, he's just showing the nose, putting himself into the mirrors of Dennison. Keep applying that pressure, keep applying that constant look for opportunities, that constant seeking for a pass, seeking a move here or there. Dennison has this one under control. You can see how much more aggressive Kendall is on the inside, taking the curb. He's just desperate to try and find a position here. These slower, kind of tighter corners in this back end part of the second half of a lap can possibly be a downfall or a blessing if you can try and pull yourself alongside. It's the end of another lap. Out of turn 13, now towards 14 and 15. These two have pulled some 4.5 seconds over the rest of the field, which is quite incredible. It shows how much the pace they've got, but also how much this lot have been so caught up battling for third backwards. So, Thomas Merritt currently holds third place. There's Blackwell Chambers going up the inside of Benji Douglas for fifth position. Benji puts the power down and tries to onto the place, which he does. As they come up the straight and towards turns 1, 2 and 3. Now, is Blackwell Chambers going to be brave enough here to look around the outside? Mike will take a look here if he's got an opportunity. But he might look for the switchback instead. Douglas sweeps through, takes the inside racing line, has enough grip to get back across to the optimal line for the corner, and holds on to the position. There's quite a lot of just waiting for a pass here, waiting for an opportunity, just keeping the pressure on, keeping the pace up as much as possible. Chambers doing everything he needs to at the moment, but he knows that the longer he's stuck behind here, the lesser chance he has of scoring a podium. Got third place in race 1. Currently sits in 6th. There's Thomas Griffiths in 8th position. Closing up to this 3-car battle that's going on for 5th to 7th position. Also not far behind him is Harry Barker. So Richard Jepp is in here too. Chambers having a look to the outside line. Later on the brakes, he's got to be careful though, because Richard Jepp is having a look. He's left the door wide open, and through might just walk Richard Jepp. The Team Northbrook car is now the outside line for turn 11. Chambers covers it off. All of this is just bringing Griffiths straight into play here. It's now a 4-car battle. It's developed for 5th position. Again, Blackwell Chambers getting very aggressive up the inside line. He knows he has to get past, try and catch the 2 cars in front, but Douglas has the grip. Have the inside line in trap position for the next corner, which is a left-hander. Behind them, Jepp and Griffiths are almost side by side, and Douglas sweeps across and holds on, squeezes Blackwell Chambers right to the edge of the circuit. Will's having absolutely none of it and gets a tag from the back of Richard Jepp, does Benji Douglas. Round goes Benji. Recovers, thankfully not collecting anyone else. Richard Jepp then holds on. Meanwhile, for the lead, it's still nose to tail once again, and Matt Kendall knows he's got to go on the attack quite quickly. Here he comes up the inside. This is it for the lead. In towards turn 3. They're just about rub body panels. Dennison again stands his ground, holds firm and frustrates Kendall even more. Still in the lead, but then nose to tail up towards turn 5. We'll look up the inside. He's peaking, but still no room to get through. It's always a decreasing radius in towards turn 5, and then up the hill towards 6. Very tricky braking zones in some of these corners at Navarra. Kendall trying to make the most of it. He's swarming all over the back of Dennison. Looking left, looking right, looking for any avenue, any crack of an opportunity to get through. He's as close as he's ever been off the exit of turn 8, and here he comes. Right through the gears, trying to pull himself alongside, darts back into the slipstream, darts back out again to look down the outside. Will he be later on the brakes into 9? Have to get a massive undercut, and has to turn in because he knows Dennison's right on the apex. He couldn't do the switchback because he was a little too far alongside on the outside to make it happen. Now he looks back up the inside for 11, and how close do you want to get to the back of James Dennison? Close as you like. Out through turn 12, back towards 13. They've just put a lap on Mark Blunt, who's been to the pits, and some repairs. Back towards 14 and 15. Stay focused on this, but I've also noticed in the background that there is the fight going on for third that's quite close between Thomas Merritt and Isaac Doble, but we'll keep the focus here with our leaders. Onto the back straight. I think they're going to get across the line with just about one more lap to go. Yes, white flag will be in the air this time by. Across the line with about 4 seconds to go. So one more time around Sakita de Navarra. If Mike Kendall's going to get this done, he has to do it now. This is the lap he's got to do it. Under brakes. Through turn 2. Down to second. Through turn 3. So feet the power in nice and neatly. Back up through the gears again into third. Flat through turn 4, up into 4th gear at the apex. Now towards turn 5 again. On the limiter, on the bumps. Still trying to find a way through here, but Dennison's putting his car in all the right places at all the right times to defend from Kendall. Kendall's got to either try something or just be resigned to the fact he's going to have to be second again, but these are racing drivers. They're not going to settle for second place. If there's an opportunity, he will go for it every day of the week. Onto the back straight they go for the final time. They're well clear of the battle for third. That's now really closed up. It's now a 6-car fight for third. Keep an eye on that, but still with the leaders in towards turn 9. Arcing through 10. And Dennison, I think, has got the small gap here that he needs to defend from Kendall, unless it's a mega aggressive final couple of corners. Kendall. This might well be 2 from 2 for Dennison, but it's not over just yet. Up to 12, up towards turn 13. And Dennison, who was doing quite a lot of chasing in the Mazda MX-5, seems to have found a knack with this BMW. It's a fixed setup. Seems to be rather enjoying it. There's the fight for third going on. This is between Merritt, Doble, Blackwell Chambers and Jet. Also, Tom Griffiths and Harry Barker are involved in this as well. There's 6 of them fighting over the final podium spot. Up to the checkered flag. Wait for one win to come along, and then 2 come along at once, just like buses. It's James Dennison who takes victory once again in race number 2 at Navarra in the BRSCC Winter eSports Series. It's the mad scramble for third place, behind Matt Kendall in second, and across the line it will be Thomas Merritt who gets third place, Doble 4th, and he only held on, 4th place did Isaac, by 61 thousandths of a second. So pretty close in the drag race to take the 4th position. Across the line comes the rest of the field. Was 5th for Blackwell Chambers, 6th for Richard Jett, 7th for Tom Griffiths, 8th for Harry Barker, 9th for Benji Douglas, and 10th for Pete Smith as they come across the line. And what will happen now is that the top 10 will now be reversed for race number 3, which means that Pete Smith will take up pole position with Benji Douglas alongside. Now, Benji was quite impressive in that opening stages of race 2, so I wonder if he might get a good opportunity to possibly get a good start here. But of course, remember that the cars that are starting further back are going to have to pick their way through those that they finished ahead of in this race, as Bobby Holmes comes across the line in 24th position. Dan Gamble in car 7 is across the line in 25th. A couple of other cars that were lapped have also crossed the line as well, including Lewis Turkington and Josh Jackson. Mark Blunt, that we also mentioned, had come into the pits with a couple of issues, but he managed to come across the line in 28th spot. 2 races down, 1 still to go. We've got a little bit of a quick 5-minute warm-up session here before we get race 3 underway. We just have to go through the process of setting the grid for race number 3, which includes reversing that top 10. So we'll give you the result of race number 2 in a moment. But here it is. So James Dennison then takes victory in race number 2 to make it a perfect score so far from 2025. He takes victory for Bromley Racing with Alba Studios, just 0.6 of a second, resisting the pressure from Matt Kendall, who will be desperate to get a victory this time, particularly as it'll be starting on the 5th row again alongside James Dennison. A good start could possibly give him the chance he needs to pick through the traffic quickly enough in the cars ahead and get himself towards the front, possibly ahead of Dennison. There goes to Thomas Merritt. Really good drive from Thomas, getting himself into 3rd place. He takes a podium in his 2nd race in the series. Isaac Doble 4th, Will Blackwell Chambers 5th, Richard Jett takes P6. Tom Griffiths, Harry Barker, Benji Douglas back in 9th, and Pete Smith should get the top 10 reverse grid pole position, finishing in P10. It's Tom Wanhemius, John Pethick, who did a pretty decent job there to get up to 12th position. Nick Ramsey-Goff didn't move too much from his starting spot in race 2. He is back in 13th. 14th is Joe Moss, much better time than he had in race 1 when he got turned around at the first couple of laps, but he managed to carry on, recover to a top 15 finish ahead of Chris Etheridge. Then Keith Dalton, Daniel Crisp and Jacob Woods round out the top 18 finishers. Then from 19th backwards, it's Paul Dunningham, Carl Pilkington and James Roberts. So Carl Pilkington won the Battle of the Photographers by beating James in 21st. Jamie Peters Ennis from Neil Chisnell, Bobby Holmes, Dan Gamble, Lewis Turkington, Josh Jackson and Mark Blunt round out the 28 runners that we had. We also had Max Haller and Jonathan Berry, who also hit their strife early in race 2. Now we move on to race number 3. As we said, the top 10 will be reversed. And of course, for those who are wanting to know a little bit more about the upcoming season for BRSCC and also for our title sponsor, we'll get to them in a second. But BRSCC, of course, an exciting season once again in prospect. I know we say it every year, but there is some exciting stuff coming for 2025. One in particular event which is excellent is the fact that the BRSCC is very privileged to be given the designated the race organiser for the return of the European Le Mans Series to the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit to the UK, and for the Goodyear 4 Hours of Silverstone. You can find the full news release for that on the BRSCC website as well. And the calendar for this year, 2025, is looking pretty decent in terms of the championships. Lots of the particular favourites from those who enjoy BRSCC racing: Master MX-5s, Fiestas, BMWs, City Car are back once again, of course, and some of the other championships and series like C1 Endurance, Super Sport Endurance, Fun Cup Endurance as well, Super Classic Formula Fords. A lot. It's all back there once again. Couple of new additions for 2025. We have the Fixer Wheel Production Cup, which has been sponsored, of course, by Jared Coulson and everyone at Fixer Wheel, so thank you for their support of the new series. It's essentially a sprint racing version of what you would know as the Club Sport Trophy. Same class structure and idea. It'll also feature another brand new project, which is within it racing this season, the Silver Lake DS3 Cup, another new sort of entry to mid-level hot hatch tin top for those getting involved. Good cost-effective car, lots of donor cars already being bought and put together already. So if you want to find out more about those, you can head to the website brscc.co.uk. There's also the new BRSCC Pro Sport Sprint Series. That's for a bit more faster, more powerful, more race-bred machinery, things like touring cars and older Ginettas and possible older cup cars and challenge cars and other fast cars that would fit into the mix. The top class has a power-to-weight ratio cap, or essentially it's the power-to-weight ratio is over 350 brake horsepower per tonne. So essentially, in many cases, to a certain extent, barring the rules, the sky's pretty much the limit. We could see some pretty tasty machinery on that grid for next season. And of course, we've got the MG Cockshoot Cup as well, which you come across from the MG Owners Club. They are running with the BRSCC full-time in 2025 as well as some other plenty of exciting and enticing developments throughout 2025. Of course, we've got the return of the Silverstone 24 Hours, which is taking place at the beginning of May on a bank holiday weekend as well. So it means if you are competing, you get an extra day off work as well to go back if you are travelling across the country or even travelling from abroad if you want to get involved. If you want information on all the championships and series and how to get involved, you can just head to the website brscc.co.uk and be sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on X, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, and also here on YouTube as well. So be sure to subscribe and hit notifications so that when we do go live once again, not just for the eSports rounds, but of course for our live stream schedule, which is to be decided going forwards over the course of the season, you won't miss a minute of the action. And of course, all the live streams are always available to watch back in full as live replays anytime you want on the channel where you can find it. So be sure to subscribe here on this channel, youtube.com/theBRSCC. So just coming towards the end of the warm-up session, and we're now getting set for the start of the third race of the season. And as we mentioned, the top 10 has been reversed, which means that it's pretty standard to tell you who's on pole position, because we will have a look. So Pete Smith does then start on pole position from the front of the grid with Benji Douglas alongside him on the front row. Then it's Harry Barker and Tom Griffiths from row 2. Then Richard Jepp and Will Blackwood Chambers, who could be a favourite for victory if he can keep Isaac Doble and Thomas Merritt behind, and especially his teammate Matt Kendall and James Dennison, who's won the first 2 races. Can he do the hat-trick starting back in 10th? Then it's Tom Monhemius and John Pethick on the 6th row of the grid, which is basically the results now are from how they finished in race number 2 from 11th backwards. So it's Monhemius and Pethick on the 6th row, followed by Nick Ramsey-Goff and Joe Moss on the 7th row. Then it's going to be 8th row being Richard Dalton, and then it'll be Crisp, Woods, Dunningham and Pilkington rounding out the top 20. So for one final time in the first night of racing for 2025 of the Clapham North Winter Esports Series, we are underway in racing here at Navarra. It's a very quick start from Dan Crisp, it looks like, in the middle of the pack. So head down towards turn 1. Who's going to get the whole shot this time? It's a wide approach from Pete Smith. 2 Northbrook cars are in line astern trying to get round the outside of Benji Douglas, but Benji has the line he needs. Goes on to second place and has a little sniff up the inside to try and pinch the lead away into turn 3. Piling through complex for the first time. It is going to be Pete Smith who will lead the way. Then Douglas in second place, Barker in third, Jepp in fourth. He's under pressure now from Tom Griffiths, who is going for fourth, and behind there's a couple of cars getting together. There's 1 or 2 involved. One of the Barney with Dinosaur cars involved in that. Dolphins into the gravel trap. The other car that's involved in that is Bobby Holmes. I think the other car, which was Jamie Peters-Ennis, was possible to enter that. And on the grass are both Richard Jepp and Tom Griffiths. They've had a set 2 and towards turn 5 and 6. Both rejoin. Jepp is down to 7th, and Griffiths is down to 11th place. So as they come onto the back straight, it's all action stations in the fight for positions. It's Smith who leads, Benji Douglas in second place, Harry Barker is third, it's Blackwell Chambers fourth, Doble in fifth, Jepp in sixth position, and in 7th place where you find Thomas Merritt. Then you find Kendall and Dennison still in the pack here. They haven't made the quickest of starts they'd like to. They're still stuck in 8th and 9th. They're getting caught up in the traffic ahead of them. Dennison is now having to resist here from both Mon Hemius in green and white here, and also the covering Tom Griffiths. Around goes Richard Jepp on the exit there of was turn in 12. Now has the agonising weight of watching everyone else pile past him to go to the back of the field, and last in what will be essentially 25th position pretty much. He's ahead of a few other cars that got caught up in some lap one shenanigans. Continues on. That's his race has taken quite an early nosedive. Meanwhile, Dennison is quickly just held off both Monhemius and Griffiths, who will now start to recover back up the pack. At the end of lap number 1, Smith who leads from his reverse grid pole. Benji Douglas still second place. It's Barker in third, and I think the man with the big advantage here, possibly, is Will Blackwell Chambers in 4th place. Making his way up through the order again. He's a few spots ahead of his 2 main rivals from tonight so far, both James Dennison and Matt Kendall. Still stuck in 8th and 9th place, 7th and 8th places respectively. So they gained a free pass after the spin from Richard Jepp at turn 12. And this sort of top 5, again, like in races 1 and 2, that sort of initial breakaway leading group of cars was allowing everyone else to scrap amongst each other. Wide there from Smith on the exit of turn 7. Towards 8 again, and Douglas might smell an opportunity to get through here. They come out through 9. Onto the back straight once again. On the second lap on this final race of the evening. Whoops, and in the background someone's gone around. That's Dan Crisp, who's had a loop around at the exit of turn 9. Pulls his way back onto the circuit, but he's lost several places. And he will rejoin just behind Lewis Turkington, back in, it looks like, 19th place. Comes Will Blackwell Chambers, having a look up the inside into turn 11. But the better grip on the outside offered for Harry Barker means he can hold on to the final podium spot for the time being, but he runs wide. Out towards 13. He's holding the car in all the places he needs to. Blackwell Chambers senses the opportunity. Looks at Barker. I think had to really turn out of that. And Doble makes it 3 wide on the exit up towards turn 14. So they get the last double 8 breakers through this part. Well, Blackwell Chambers has the grip. He takes it back to the racing line and holds on to 3rd place for the moment. How much can he get away with here? Doble now side by side. Larry Barker on the exit. Further back, you can also see that is Thomas Merritt defending from Matt Kendall, and James Dennison is right behind him. So while it was Kendall doing the chasing on Dennison, now it's the other way around, and Dennison is watching Matt Kendall swarm all over the rear of Thomas Merritt. 4-1 is currently 6th position. Meanwhile, these two are side by side, so you don't know where to look, and Doble almost gives him a bit of a hip and shoulder in towards 2. Has the inside line for 3. Comes across and holds on to 4th position then, so a place gained by Isaac Doble. Barker down to P5. Now here's the battle that was happening behind them. Kendall went right to the pit wall to try and find a gap up the inside to get past Merritt, but couldn't quite manage it. And now he's the one under threat from James Dennison. So they turn through 5 and 6. Really, Kendall here can't really afford to get caught up in traffic too much, but this is the beauty of the partially reverse top 10, because you're not guaranteed to pick your way through that quickly. Yes, you might be at 1 race 2 and you start on the 5th row of the grid. Still got some very quick drivers around you in this pack, so you've got to try and pick your way through as best you can. If there's anything that happens ahead, take full advantage of it, but if you're in the pack here, you can't break free in these first couple of laps. You are possibly going to stay there for the rest of the race. You're going to find it pretty tough once these cars around you start to find their feet, get the temperature into the tyres, and start to find their pace. Kendall here is really going to try and get on with it, but Thomas Merritt, as we saw, is not an easy customer to pass. He will hold on to the place as much as he can. The interesting thing is here is that Pete Smith and Benji Douglas are not running away with this. They're actually stacking up the pack behind them. And Will Blackwell Chambers, as I mentioned, taking absolutely full advantage of the fact that both Kendall and Dennison are not making the progress that they would like to have done by this stage. They want to be in at least the top 5 or up towards, nearer towards Blackwell Chambers and co, towards the front of that pack. And you can see there, Kendall thought he had a line, get a run on Merritt into the final couple of corners. That's now left him vulnerable down the pit straight. Even though Kendall will have a small toe from Merritt, Dennison has a toe off Kendall. And he might get the whiff of the entrails or whatever Merritt's also producing as well to help Kendall along. Through turn of 2 and 3. Again, later on the brakes as Kendall, he's seen this all night so far. He's quite late on the brakes, but he does that to try and just spook the car in front to make a mistake. But you know, he's quite one of the younger drivers in the field. Tom Merritt, I think many will agree in the paddock, he's he's got an older, wiser head on very young shoulders as Tom. Resisting the pressure quite well. This is Chris Etheridge in the Listerine BMW-inspired number 326 machine, and he is currently holding on ahead of John Pethick. This is over 11th and 12th. I think in his typical sky blue livery that he usually runs on his MX-5 when he's raced in previous times before. See him back in the series. Back to the leaders here for the possible change at the front. Round the outside goes Benji Douglas. Round the outside too quickly. He goes too deep, gets it sideways and spins out on the exit curb. And now has the agonising weight like Richard Jetpad of watching everyone else pile past. He rejoins back in 12th. It was just a little bit too ambitious. And now look, Pete Smith has been a little bit spooked by that. And now here comes Blackwall Chambers to try and pinch the lead. Out of turns 10 and 11 to 12, and Smith tried to move across the whole line. Blackwall Chambers backed out a bit of the final moment, but as they come back towards 14 and 15, Blackwall Chambers applying the pressure as much as he can here. The dart up the inside, a last minute dive up the inside to try and really catch him off guard. That was a really good, nicely applied pass up the inside to make it happen, and it just opened the door not only for Blackwall Chambers to get through, but so too Isaac Doble. They're going to touch wing mirrors. They're literally rubbing paddles down towards turn 1. Blackwall Chambers isn't giving a toe to anyone. Here's the rear view mirror, the perfect view here. It's Pete Smith on the right, Isaac Doble on the left, and Doble has the inside line. He's got track position. Has he got the place? Almost. Yes, he's got it. Second place. So Isaac Doble then into the runner-up spot. Now, can he challenge Blackwall Chambers? Can he make it through? Also mentioned that Matt Kendall and James Dennison still haven't got past Thomas Merritt in 5th position. They've also, of course, gained a place after Benji Douglas went too deep on the brakes and towards turn 8 and couldn't make it happen. Here's the replay. Douglas has the inside run, and the last minute switches to the outside because he knows that Smith has gone to defend it. Under brakes, just there was a bit of contact, but it looked like it was more Benji trying to turn across and hit the apex, but not really realising that Pete was still on the inside line. To me, it looked like it looked to me as if it was more Benji trying to come across and take his regular racing line, not realising that Pete was still that far enough alongside. Fortunately, it was the cause of his own demise. So he's now still back in. He's now 12th position. Just at the top of the screen in red, in the background. He might have to finish outside the top 10 unless anything else happens. It's battle pack here. This is definitely not a race where the leaders are running away with it. Although, having said that, Will Chambers and Doble are just creating a very tiny gap here at the front. The rest of the pack are chasing Pete Smith for 3rd place. The shuffles around on the left-hand side for positions up and down the grid. We watch them head out of the final corner and back onto the pit straight once again. But coming up to 2/3 distance in this final race of the night. It's getting the most intense at the moment because we've now got the top 7 line astern. Change on for 8th potentially. Tom Monhemius is under threat from Tom Griffiths up towards first few right-handers. Does Griffiths dart out? He thinks about it. They've got a pack marker in front to try and negotiate, which is going to be not the viewing they wanted to see at that high speed part of the circuit. Up the inside, finally, there goes Matt Kendall, though. That was Kendall going up the inside to try and take what will be 5th position. And Dennison goes with him, or tries to at least, has the outside line exiting 4. Merritt again is standing his ground. Up the inside in towards 5. Will he hold on to the place? He's trying, and Dennison gets a little loose on the exit of 5, trying to break and hold on to it. He purposely took that wide line to get the inside cut back. Merritt has the line, he covers off the line, and off the 3 goes into what is now currently, 6th position still for Merritt. And that's crucial now because both Kendall now has a car between himself and Dennison. But not only is he ahead of him, he's ahead of him by a car and gaining a couple more points. Even at an early stage, it's way too early to be talking about who wins the series title, but even so, every single point has to count. And it's the days when you can't win, you have to score as many points as possible. Shuffle backwards to some battles towards the base of the top 20. Seeing Jamie Peters-Ennis battling with James Roberts. I think I'd say that in terms of sim racing competition, but stranger things have happened. These two fighting away with Neil Chisnell, who's in the Schnitzer-inspired livery BMW. The legendary team that was run by Charlie Lamb, which raced all across Europe and indeed further afield in Asia. And they had not just the touring cars, but to sports cars and prototypes as well. It's good to see Neil taking part as well. He was the standout drivers who were a regular top 10 finisher in the Gazshock Mazda MX-5 Championship last year. See him back in the championship again in 2025. These four look as though they're pretty much settled now. You've got Mark Blunt in there in 20th place. He's now on the tail of Neil Chisnell, not too far away from him. It's the final corner. And through the gears again. Jamie Peters is trying to distract James Roberts a bit here, trying to flash the headlights. It's a classic distraction technique. Just forces you to look in your mirrors and think a split second about something else other than what's coming up next on track. And you miss your braking point, turning a bit too late. And in fact, it might have worked because there goes James Roberts. Just as I say that, goes way down the outside. Neil Chisnell completely misses the track altogether. Is deep on the exit of 3, and he, as a result of that, pays for his mistake as Mark Blunt squeezes through and up into a free 19th place. Now back with our leading group, and you can see in the background here, it's still kicking off in the battle for third downwards. These two have pulled away slightly. Blackwood Chambers has the advantage. Doble in second place, and still for third place, nobody else can find a way past Pete Smith. I think it's because they're more fussed with battling amongst each other to be the next person to challenge him. But at the moment, Harry Barker doing everything he needs to hold on to fourth place. He has got a rather feisty Matt Kendall right behind him. Thomas Merritt is still the car that's in between himself and James Dennison, so no real movement in this scrap for third backwards. Blackwood Chambers, now that he's got clear air, has pulled clear from Isaac Noble for about 1.2 seconds and has the fastest lap of the race. He's done a 1 minute 50.333 to be fastest lap of the race so far. About a couple of minutes to go. And off the road's gone Richard Jett for his second excursion of the race across the circuit, and ambles his way back through as Neil Chisnell gets another free pass up into 19th. He's also rejoined ahead of Keith Dalton, who is the BASF audio sponsored car. It is sans a front end. It has, practically apart from a solitary headlight that's holding on somehow, it has no front bumper, it has no grille, it has no I presume it still has its radiator on the front as well, but either way, that car's still surviving somehow. Oh, and there's another free pass. That was Mark Blunt, wasn't it? Mark Blunt has gone around at the exit of the final corner. He'll drop a couple more places. I think there's a few drivers who either are or they aren't used to rear-wheel drive. Cases in point like Richard Jepp and Mark Blunt are just struggling rear-wheel drive a little bit. Someone who isn't is James Dennison. He goes steaming up the inside into 6 and finally makes the move. He's been looking to try and make for the last couple of laps on Thomas Merritt. Into the place he goes, and immediately, next thing he does is go straight onto the tail at Kendall to try and pressure him for position here. Kendall, meanwhile, he's got more pressing matters, which is to try and attack Barker for fourth. Just darts out, puts himself into the wing mirrors. As they come back out under power once again, it's still these 5 that are battling over third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 7th. But the front is still 1.4 seconds as up in the tail there from Merritt into the back of Dennison. Reminding him he's still there. He'll come through. It might be touch and go with being the last lap of the race or not. We'll wait and see. He might just get to the flag. We'll wait and see. There might be checker flag this time by, but we'll have a look and see. The time is 15 seconds. As the final corner will come Will Blackwood Chambers. It'll either be checkered or white. Might just get to the line. No, it's checker flag this time by, in fact, actually, because they are going to come across the line. So, the final race of the evening is going to be victory in the mix for Will Blackwood Chambers. The sprint to the line for second and third was pretty close there because Isaac Doble, Doble got second place. For third, it was Pete Smith and Harry Barker with a drag race to the line. It was Smith who just about got it by, that's about half a tenth of a second. So impressive stuff from Harry Barker to take fourth place. Matt Kendall does take fifth. Edison did hold on to sixth ahead of Thomas Merritt. Then Griffiths 8th, Monhemius 9th, then Etheridge and Petherick rounding out the 10th and 11th spots. And this is now Richard Jepp. He's had a very eventful last race, still getting into it and into the barriers. It was a bit unnecessary, but that was with Neil Chisnell. And yeah, that was 2 cars literally fighting for the same piece of tarmac, and it was either Max Horler or Jacob Woods, one of the two. It was Max Horler. So he's to ill with a reversing Richard Jepp on the circuit. Chisnell does in fact get to the line, but he'll finish in 23rd. It all just came to a head right at the end in that section, but that's the first evening of racing complete, and there's still 4 more to go in the rest of the season as we progress. So, racing complete at Circuito de Navarra, and it's been 2 wins for James Dennison and a victory in race number 3 from the partially reverse grid, going the way of Will Blackwell Chambers. He takes the final race of the evening, and he wins by 1.5 seconds from Isaac Doble in second place. In third was Pete Smith, who just won that drag race between himself and Ari Barkers of a line, separated by about half a tenth of a second. Then Matt Kendall holds on to 5th, ahead of James Dennison in 6th, Thomas Merritt down to 7th, Tom Griffiths, Tom Monhemius and Chris Etheridge rounding out the top 10. John Pethick 11th from Benji Douglas in 12th. Nick Ramsey-Goff in 13th place. Paul Dunningham in 14th. Pilkington, Jamie Peters-Ennis, Keith Dalton and James Roberts rounding out the top 18. And then in 19th position, that backwards as we go down the rest of the order, it is Jacob Woods in 19th place. It's 20th for the Josh Jackson in car number 27. And it was Max Horler, Mark Blunt, Chisnell, who got tangled up with Richard Jepp on the pit straight on the final lap of the race. Jonathan Berry was 25th and Lewis Turkington, and then Dan Gamble and Daniel Crisp. And the last couple of cars that were in the field out of the 30 that we had were Joe Moss and Bobby Holmes. So they were the last couple of drivers who had issues on the first lap and couldn't quite make it through. That's it. We're going to try and maximise the time that we have. We've got about roughly 15 minutes or so. We shouldn't need that much, but we've got a couple of interviews that we'll be setting up in a moment as we watch through some of the interviews at the end of the race. A couple of interviewees that have come in already. So what we'll do is we'll start with the man who finished second in two races tonight, and also to pick his way through from what was 9th on the grid in race number 3, and that was Matt Kendall. Of course, Matt had a eventful night, but he's managed to pick up some good points. Matt, congratulations tonight. 2 podiums in a very scrappy race number 3. Just first, we'll talk us through those first 2 when you were duelling mainly with James and staring at the back of his bumper, whilst also having to end off from your teammate at the same time.
Oh, I didn't quite get the lapping qualifying I wanted. It's very tight. With these cars, you might be able to sort of stick with the bumper, but any sort of move is going to cook your fronts, and that's basically what ended up happening. I sort of had a couple of looks at James in the first few laps of race 1. Saw the front tyres go above 2 bar, and I thought, that's going to be trouble. And then it was pretty much the same deal in the second race, but it was we got some really fun racing while the tyres lasted. So yeah, it was great.
I did think this circuit was more of a rear limited circuit. Is that a lot of traction zones where you have to get the power on that sense? Did you feel that in these particular 3 races, given the fact you had a lot of zones that are a lot of acceleration, getting the power down smoothly? Was that affecting you as you got towards the end of the races in each of those occasions that you were using the tyres up a bit more?
Interestingly, with this car, you sort of at the start it's very rear limited, but then as the front sort of cook themselves, you find that you're charging into every corner so fast that you end up exiting them straight enough that the rear sort of calm down a bit. So that then leads you to ploughing even more. So it's just this vicious cycle that just keeps going through all the races.
You consistently applied the pressure throughout those first 2 races, right on the rear bumper of James in the mix. On both occasions, kind of Will fell back a little bit through his own pace or his own dramas. It really felt as though in that sense that whatever you tried to do, James just put his car in all the right places and all the right times and just had an answer for everything that you could throw at him in those first 2 races.
Yeah, I mean, all my experience in this car so far suggests that basically you have one chance at the start, maybe first lap, and then because of the size and the fact that James is obviously very experienced, he's as you say, he's putting a big car in all the right places. You can't do much. But still, it's a very different type of racing to Mazda's. It's a lot more reliant on your raw pace than draft and luck. So that's I think positive because
you had to rely a bit on your pace, particularly in race number 3 when you were starting back on the 5th row. But is it fair to say you didn't make the progress that you were hoping to do in the first couple of laps, and you spent a lot of that race chasing the tail of Tom Merritt and eventually getting past him? But did you feel as though that you spent maybe too much time trying to get past because they just had enough pace on you to try and hold you back?
With this car, I found that you need probably 4 or 5 tenths a lap delta to make a convincing overtake that isn't multiple corners long. And as we saw in qualifying, the gap from pole to 10th was something like 4 or 5 tenths of a second. So that delta was never really there, and me and James both sort of got stuck in that sort of zone. But again, it's a very different challenge to the Mazda reversing top 10. With Mazda, you draft past, and generally people hook onto the back of you in that scenario. But people are a lot more willing to fight because they can. So you get a lot more exciting racing going on.
Yeah, plenty of exciting racing up and down the field. If you watch it back, there's lots going on, not just with you guys at front, but middle and towards the rear as well. Donington Park coming up next in the second one on the full GP circuit. Again, a couple of good hairpins there to make some attacks. It looks as though early on that the initial pace setters appear to be yourself, James, Will, a couple of us starting to come strong in that third race as well. Do you think we're going to see like we have in the first couple of seasons with the Mazdas, where you've got the initial pace setters, but as the season goes on, more and more are going to start to click with this setup, click with the car, and create that bigger lead gap that we start, that bigger leading group that we started to see as race 3 developed with that reverse grid top 10?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a new car. iRacing are still working out the kinks in it, and people are gonna be driving it more. They're gonna be doing officials more. They're gonna be getting used to racing it, how they drive in packs. So, yeah, I reckon probably we're gonna have 5 or 6 cars probably by the middle of the season that are all capable of winning races.
Well, look forward to that. That's going to be quite expected to see. And of course, good stuff for the Clapham North team tonight with two second places in the mix. Great stuff, Matt. Well driven, and all being well, we'll see you in a couple of weeks at Donington Park. But for now, great job, and go and enjoy it.
Thank you.
Great stuff. So that is Matt Kendall complete for his work complete for the night, with 2 second places and a battle through in towards the top 5. Let's bring in the man who had to really fight for third place in the end, but had an up and down first couple of races, but kind of held back the tide in race number 3, and that's Pete Smith. Let's bring in Pete, who, of course, we know regularly from Mazda MX-5s. But Pete, that in particular, let's talk about that third race, because you really had to get your elbows out and really get your defence on multiple occasions, trying to hold the tide back from those in front. How was that as an experience, trying to keep back so many quick drivers behind you after you benefited from that top 10 reverse grid?
Yeah, it was tough, Scott. I benefited a little bit from having a good launch, so it gave me a couple of laps of just breathing space to get into my rhythm. But when I'm not sure who was, but I think might have been Barney or before Will. Yeah, he raced me really hard, and it was unfortunate that we had a little. It looked like netcode, but there might have been a little touch at the hairpin there. But yeah, it was it was hard graft keeping them behind for sure, and obviously Will when Isaac got through in the end. But happy with the podium.
Yeah, it looked as though Benji was attacking you in the early few laps. Looked like he went diving down the outside and probably didn't, from what I could see, I'm not a steward of course, but it looked like he didn't realise how far enough alongside you still were when he was going down the outside, and it looks like he almost spun himself out. But that might be one for the stewards if they decide to have a look at it. On the whole, though, of course, you're used to the MX-5 in the past couple of seasons, and then, of course, in real life, you've run an MX-5 now. A different car, even though it is rear-wheel drive now, the BMW. What's your experience been of this car so far from the laps that you've done in the 3 races that you've done tonight? How are you finding the transition from the MX-5 now to the M2?
I really like it. So obviously I raced the BMW Compacts before, so always rear-wheel drive. But funnily enough, I said to Will the other day, with the setting changes that they've made with the suspension on MDM, the M2 actually drives more like my race Mazda than the Mazda on iRacing does, because obviously it's a few generations newer. So it felt a little bit more familiar in terms of what I'm trying to do with trail braking and turning in and the way the car responds. So I really like it. I don't want to get ahead of myself because the first round's gone well, but I'm hoping that as we go on through this eSports series, I'm able to keep up, maybe get a bit quicker.
Do you think that similarity, that in feel to your real world race car, do you think that's going to help you improve pace and get a bit quicker as the next few rounds go on, because you've got Donington Park coming up next on the GP circuit? Do you think that familiarity is going to help you find a bit more pace?
I hope so. What it will certainly do is help me not have to learn another thing. So because the car's familiar, I know the track, I should just be able to figure out where my braking points are, where I can extract that pace. So hopefully with the limited time that I'll have to test in between rounds, it will mean I can focus on that rather than trying to figure out the car track combo and all of that stuff. So really hoping that I can find a few more tenths, because I'm going to need it.
Great stuff. Well, a top 3 to the top 3 and a solid finishing spot in race number 3 still good, and I think you made some good progress throughout the night as well. So go and enjoy that, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks at Donington Park and see how you progress there. Well done.
Nice one. Cheers, Scott.
Great stuff. Right, let's bring in the other man that we have in our interview waiting area, and it happens to be the man who took victory in race number 3, and it was also in the mix all the way from start to finish, Mr. Will Blackwall Chambers.
Evening.
That wasn't well. I guess you want to start how you proceeded, really, because you picked up a decent victory, but I think that was more a case of not taking away from the performance. It was more a case of making hay whilst the sun shone, as in Matt and James being stuck in the pack whilst they were trying to pick their way through. But you made the most of that and really got yourself to the front. And once you were up there, you were pretty much laughing.
Yeah, race 1 we had good pace. We were sort of staying with them, but didn't really have the pace to challenge. Race 2, trying to do the same, got the assisted wide, let's put it like that. Sort of tried to recover back through, but this car is very different from the Mazda we used to race. There's not as much slipstream, and getting through the pack's definitely a bit harder. So as you say, using the reverse grid for race 3 was really good to get up the front in the Clapham car. And yeah, it was really nice to just be able to control the race from the front. I must admit, I'm normally quite chatty when I'm racing, but I was fairly quiet in that one because the concentration was high.
I don't blame you, given the fact you're having to hold on for that one. And it looks as though these cars are, in particular, very racy in terms of you can, within reason, if you want to throw, you did it a couple of times to try and make a move, lots of people did. You can go side by side for a lot of corners a lot of the time with this car in particular when you've got the grip. It has enough grip and cadence about it to be able to hold on to that. Do you feel these cars are a bit more racier compared to the ones that were the Mazda MX-5s that we had in terms of just the way they are in terms of dynamics or the weight or raceability? Do you think there's more about them?
I think they're a more fun car to race at the moment. They've got a lot less slipstream, so a lot of the overtakes you actually have to work for rather than just driving past each other. They also do fairly well with a little bit of side-to-side contact, whereas the Mazda used to pretty much fall apart if you so much as rub someone. So I find it's really, really good racing at the moment. But it is harder to make an overtake because you've actually got to work for it rather than drive past. And if you do too many moves in too short of a succession, you tend to cook the front tyres as well, which means you're then sliding backwards. So bit of a balancing game, but to be honest, I'm loving it.
Great stuff. We're getting close on time in terms of the broadcast, so we'll keep this brief in terms of the last question. Next one, of course, is coming up with Donington Park. I think a really positive start, albeit one or two usual skirmishes and stuff, but I think a really positive start to the season. I think Donington Park hopefully should bring more exciting race. And I think, as we're talking about with Matt, more and more drivers should get the click with this setup and start to get forward. So are you excited for how this is going to progress going forwards in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think just chatting with everyone in the Discord, there's really, really positive feedback about the car and how this is going. Donington's certainly going to be an adventure. We're going to have our first ever wet race for the BRSCC eSports in race 3 at Donington, so that's going to be an adventure into the unknown. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Great stuff. We're going to get one more interview before we have to close off. But again, well done on the victory, and go and study up for the wet, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks at Donington.
Perfect. Cheers for that. And as ever, thanks for Clapham North for coming on board with this series and sponsoring the cars.
Yeah, echo that as well. Thank you. Well, we're going to quickly squeeze in one very quick last interview. We are just getting quite short on time. We'll quickly short in with the man who took 2 victories from tonight and certainly will be going forwards with a bit of momentum, and that is James Dennison. James, congratulations. 2 victories from 3 tonight. Had a bit of try and pick your way through where you could in the pack, but not a bad way to start off the first couple of races in the BMW.
Yeah, it was really good. It's an enjoyable track. The car takes a bit of getting used to, but yeah, once you get the hang of it, it's good fun to drive. And yeah, I think it's been a pretty good evening for Bromley Motorsport, which is the name you'll see on the side of the car, and also Pete's car as well, because yeah, he got a podium in the last race, which was really good for him. And yeah, it was just really close racing. It's not as slipstreamy as the MX-5. There's barely any draft in these, which means that it's a slightly different way of driving it. But yeah, I think everyone adapted well, because I remember the first round last year and it felt like there was a lot more crashes than there were in this. So yeah, I think it was good driving from everyone.
Of course, you had Matt on your tail pretty much constantly throughout the evening. Of course, in race 3, he had a bit more on you in terms of pace on that side. Initially, I might have to make this the last question because we are running short on time for the broadcast. In terms of going forward to Donington Park, then, of course, the initial pack appears to have been the trio of yourself, Matt, and Will. But now, of course, there's more drivers, particularly in that third race, started to emerge, like Isaac Doble, like the Northbrook guys, like Thomas Merritt. Those guys getting in the mix. So, how much more competitive are you expecting it to be towards the front by the time we get to Donington in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it will be even more competitive, especially we saw last season that more people got into it, including me, as the season went on and they got quicker. And I think, to be fair, in that third race, I think a couple of people were holding back just a little bit because they were happy with how they'd done in the first and the second race. So, yeah, it might get a bit spicier. We might see a few more lunges. But, yeah, I think it'll be super close all the way through the season. I don't think this is going to be an outlier. I think it'll be really good watching. So, yeah, hopefully everyone keeps watching.
Congratulations, 2 victories. That sets you up nicely to go down to the couple of weeks. We'll see you there, and fingers crossed you can keep the pace up. But until then, well done.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks for that.
Great job. Right, we're going to quickly wrap up the broadcast here because we are getting short to our broadcast time. So, 3 races down, 12 more still to go, but it's 2 wins for James Dennison and 1 for Will Blackwell-Chambers, along with Matt Kendall and others in the mix. They are the pace setters coming out of Spain. We now leave continental Europe. We're back to the UK shores once again for all 4 races, and it's coming up next is a couple of weeks' time. It is Donington Park GP on January 23rd, and as Will mentioned, it will have the first ever wet race in race number 3 for the BRSCC Clapham North Winter Esports Series. So thanks to Clapham North for all the support. Thanks to Apex Racing and Samudi Kumi for all the efforts they've put in for broadcasting tonight. Thanks to all the drivers. Thanks to everyone at BRSCC. If you want to find out more about the series and everything else, go to the website brscc.co.uk and follow us up on socials, on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and also subscribe to us on YouTube as well, and to Apex Racing TV, of course. From myself, Scott Woodris, I'm Samudi Komu, and everyone here at BRSCC, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks' time for the second event of the season at Donington Park for the 2025 Clapham North BRSCC Winter Esports Series. But until then, bye for now.